What's up, everybody? Welcome back to Deer Season Daily, October 14th. Going to talk about Blake's first hunt. That video came out today. The last day of the youth season here in Illinois. We got some news out of Michigan that's not great. And then, obviously, weather movement predictions and the tip of the day. But before we get into that, don't forget about our partner for Deer Season Daily. That's Rack's Big Game Supplements. If you guys are looking for minerals, protein blocks to use for your deer herd, go to racksmineral.com and check that out. If you guys want to support the show, you can subscribe to the YouTube channel, leave us a comment, like, all that kind of stuff. If you're on any of the audio platforms, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, hit the follow button there, leave us a review. That really helps out. And then we have our website, Ridgehunteroutdoors.com, where you can buy merch or any of our products. Use the discount code RHOPOD, all caps, no space, for 10% off there. Getting right into it, the RHO update. Blake's first hunt video should be out. So I'm recording this Monday night. I have to go get it finished up, editing and posted, but that should be up here this evening. So yesterday evening, as you're listening to this, Blake's first hunt should have come out. That was a good one he had on October 1st from opening day. He had a good encounter with a shooter buck in a bean field. It was one that he'd been watching preseason, and it was his first encounter with him. He actually potentially had another encounter with him a couple days later, but the video was through some brush, and it wasn't awesome, and it was really short-lived. That buck came out, and he had some swirling wind, and it's like he caught a whiff of him and then turned around and went right back in the woods. So I don't know if you'll be able to ever see that one or not because you couldn't see much anyway. But the first video, he got a lot of good film of him out in the bean field, so go check that out. Also, the Jared Mills podcast that came out yesterday, make sure you guys go listen to that one. It was a really great conversation. We talked about what he's got going on this year, his new farm, and then we got really in-depth about mobile hunting and filming your hunts and kind of the benefit of that. So go give it a listen if you haven't yet. I'm not sure when we'll be back out again due to the heat this week. It kind of depends probably on if Dad wants to get out and try to go hunt, maybe kill a doe, or there's a couple nice bucks that we could maybe get on. I just don't know what as hot it's going to be, if they're going to be moving this week. I'll talk a little bit about that later. So I'm not sure. I do have my first couple hunts to get posted, and I'll probably do that sometime this week, maybe towards the end of the week. So that will come out, and then hopefully sometime shortly after that, we should be back out in the woods. For sure I'll be out there either next Sunday or Monday because we have another cold front coming through with some rain, and I think those days might be good. Just kind of depends on how things fall, how cold it actually gets, and how much rain we actually get. That takes us to talking shop. If you guys missed yesterday's daily, I talked about the weekend and what we saw from there. It was a busy weekend with youth season. Yesterday was the last day of the youth season, and we had a few decent bucks come in, still no giants, and overall a lot of does died this weekend, so that's always a positive. A lot of youth hunters getting their first deer or just any deer, again, like I talked about on yesterday's episode. That's always cool to see, and it's always good they can get out there when it's nicer weather. Like, they don't have to do it when it's 35 degrees outside. Early season, they got this 3-day weekend, most of them. They can get out there and enjoy it. And I talked to a guy in the shop today, actually. He was picking up a deer head for one of his grandkids, and he said both of them shot their first deer this year, and they just absolutely loved it. So that's awesome to hear that there's 2 more hunters that are hooked on it. And that takes us to what's new, which is kind of the opposite of that, unfortunately. There's some news out of Michigan. There's a report about how many hunters they're losing. And Michigan's been like a staple for a state full of deer hunters for years and years and years. Like, Michigan and Pennsylvania are 2 of the highest hunter density states. At least they used to be. And apparently that's going the wrong direction in Michigan. And I'm just going to read this, a very short article from WTVB. This is Brett Briscoe. Hopefully I'm saying his name right, from Coldwater, Michigan. For decades, Michigan has seen a steady long-term decline in the number of deer hunters, a trend with significant consequences for both conservation funding and wildlife management. Since peaking in the mid-1990s with over 800,000 participants, the state has lost roughly 30% of its hunters, primarily driven by older hunters aging out of the pastime without enough young people to replace them. I don't know if he looked that up or there's data on that, or if that's like, it seems like that would just be the natural progression. But anyway, that's what he's attributing most of the issue to. It says, while recent efforts by the DNR to expand hunting opportunities have led to some minor increases, experts predict the number of hunters will continue to fall in the coming years. The The ripple effects of fewer hunters with a growing concern are a growing concern for wildlife managers, particularly in areas like Branch County where the deer population is now surging. I'm guessing that's just like anywhere else. It's probably all over the state, unless they've been hit with EHD or something. With hunting being the primary tool for population control, fewer hunters lead to an overabundance of deer, which can cause increased crop damage for farmers, greater risk of vehicle collisions, and the potential spread of diseases like chronic wasting disease. I won't get into the last one because we've talked about it before. We've also talked about the other two, but that's something there that's concerning to me, because this is what we're looking at in Illinois, and they have wolves in some parts of Michigan. Like, there are parts of northern Michigan where there's wolves, that there are very few deer. So they're probably going to see that. They're going to see the decrease in hunters. And potentially these lobbyists for the Farm Bureau up there and the insurance lobbyists, just like what we have here in Illinois, are going to be pushing for more predators, which is exactly what's happened here in Illinois. And you maybe see that in Michigan too. Just like what he's highlighting here, the surging population is a major concern for farmers, vehicle collisions, and spread of disease. So there's also a bunch of money in CWD too. So there's a lot of reasons to believe that you could see some intervention with predators, more predators in Michigan as well. And it's just kind of like what we've got going on in Illinois. So that's why I thought this was interesting more than anything, because of what this guy highlighted. And I don't know if he's a hunter or not, or where he got this information from, but the things that he highlighted are the exact reasons that we have issues that we do, like the predators being reintroduced potentially into Illinois. And the other part of this is there's less hunters out there, less people appreciating what that is, and they're less likely to try to preserve that, our right to hunt, in the way we were able to do it now. So that's also kind of a side effect of losing hunters. That's not really ideal for anybody in the country, not just in the state where that's happening. The end of the article, it says this shift also threatens the financial stability of the DNR, as a significant of a portion of its budget for wildlife management and habitat conservation comes directly from hunting license fees. To address these challenges, the state is encouraging remaining hunters to harvest more does and working to address other factors such as limited hunter access to provide land where many deer now thrive. So hopefully that is the solution for them instead of the predators like we talked about. I wish that was more of the solution here in Illinois. Just encourage more does to be shot and have better access to more land for hunters to be able to do that. There's a whole rabbit hole we could go down on access and about what people, as far as shooting does, how that could go. And I'm not going to get into it on this episode, but I thought that was an interesting article. Some news out of Michigan there. Kind of sad to see that one of those states where you just think of deer hunting is losing hunters at that kind of rate. 30% is pretty crazy. So that takes us into weather and movement predictions. This is going to be fairly similar over the next week. So I don't know if I'll do it every day. I may just kind of update you on what the wind's looking like. It's supposed to be high in the 80s, in the low 80s, and it's supposed to be high 50s this morning for the low. It's going to be sunny and hot all day. Pressure is going to be actually pretty high, around 30.1 all day. It doesn't really matter when it's 80 degrees with a north to northeast wind, but I think the highest I saw was 6 miles an hour, so even gusting maybe 10. That's not going to be a ton of wind for you. It's not really going to be enough to cool anything off either. If I was going to hunt this evening, I'd be on, again, shaded food source, or maybe like a cool oak flat tucked back in the timber, or the north side of a ridge or something in the evening on the bottom of that where the cool air is collecting. Maybe that's a place you could find a buck right now. As far as does, you should maybe still have a chance at those in those fields and on those food sources, like especially in the shaded side of them. But if you're looking for a mature buck, it's going to be super tough this week. The October lull, in my opinion, is here. It's usually from give or take a couple of days around the 15th through give or take a couple of days around like the 23rd. So 15th to 25th, 13th to 23rd, somewhere in there, I think is when it hits us really hard here in Southern Illinois. And the heat's not going to help that at all. So if your cameras slow down over the next week, if you're not seeing mature bucks like you thought you should be, if you're not seeing as many deer from the stand, don't get too discouraged. It happens every year around this time. And again, as hot as it's going to be, it's not going to be any better. It's not going to make it any better. Now, that's what I got for that. Like I said, that's probably not going to change much till we get closer to the weekend and I start talking about that cold front that's coming through. And that brings us to the last segment, the tip of the day. And this one's maybe a bit controversial, but I've been seeing a lot of people talking about it lately. and it's one that I'll probably do a whole podcast on at some point. But scent control doesn't matter as much as you think. Now, before you get all up in arms about that, what I'm going to say is wind direction matters way more than anything else. So, there's some people that say scent control doesn't matter at all. And honestly, if you put a fence up at the middle of scent control doesn't matter at all, and you absolutely have to get dressed in the field and keep your stuff in one of those scent crusher bags and spray down every time you get out there, and you can never wear your clothes inside your truck or your house. You can't brush up against anything. You got to have perfectly cut trails. Like if there's both the extremes, I definitely fall more on the side of it doesn't really matter at all. And I'm not saying it doesn't at all. Like I said, I'll probably do a whole podcast on this to clarify more what I'm talking about. But wind direction above anything else. That's what I'm saying here. Scent control doesn't matter maybe as much as you think it does. Part of that is because it's been pushed so hard in the industry, advertising, marketing, because there are a lot of gimmicky products out there that are just made to get your dollar, not to help you kill bigger deer or to fool their nose. Because the bottom line is you're not fooling a deer's nose. There's so many studies and so much research done on how well deer can smell. And if you think about it, even something like cover scents, and I've had experiences where like I've sprayed some of our spray, for example, or a deer scent, where I feel like it's at least maybe confused the deer a little bit, where they've been downwind of me and I've sprayed that stuff and it's hit them and they're smelling me and the deer scent, and it maybe keeps them from spooking real bad. But the bottom line is they're still smelling me as well. Because you think about, they can go to a scrape and they can smell around in that scrape and they can tell every different deer that's been there. So just because you spray acorn, white oak acorn on your clothes or fresh dirt or whatever, all that's doing is giving them another smell that they're smelling along with you, because they can pick through all of those scents. It's pretty crazy how actually how well they can smell. I even saw a graphic recently that was talking about, like, in perfect conditions, they can smell like miles away, like several miles away. They can smell you. Obviously, that's probably wide open country with a wind blowing to them at just the right amount and the right humidity. Perfect conditions, but even with not perfect conditions, they can still smell you from so far away. And that's the thing, like, maybe you can control that distance a little bit if you're super diligent about your scent control, or if you have any protocols for that at all. But if they're downwind, they're going to smell you, and it's really more of just a matter if they care or not. Usually, if those deer are downwind of you, and we've all heard the stories or had it happen ourselves, we've had a buck go downwind of us, and you think he doesn't smell you. Either he just didn't get a whiff because he went by too fast, or he did smell you and he just decided to go anyway. He decided he didn't care, whether that be because he was not wanting to go around something, he was going to water, food, or chasing a doe. He probably smelled you, he just didn't care. And that's, in my opinion, that would probably account for a huge majority of the stories that you hear of deer downwind of me and he didn't smell me. Is probably he just didn't care. For whatever reason, that time he went by without spooking. So I guess what I'm saying is save your money on the gimmicky stuff that you see out there for scent control and just hunt the wind. You can go out there. There's a reason guys can go out there smoking cigarettes and kill big bucks, is because they, whether they were trying or not, they had the right wind, right? So pay attention to the wind and save some money on some of this stuff that doesn't really do you a lot of good out there. That's all I got for today. Hopefully you're not too mad at me for that one if you're like diehard scent control guy. And if you are, hey, if you think it works for you, absolutely still do it. But my advice would be maybe to use some money on the stuff that you're doing that, use it elsewhere, or just pay more attention to the wind. And if you're doing both, that's awesome too. So I'll see you guys tomorrow for another Deer Season Daily. Don't forget to check out Blake's video and that podcast with Jared Mills. Thanks for watching. See you tomorrow.